بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. I ask Allah to grant us the sincere intentions for this gathering of religious knowledge. So far in the stories of the prophets, we've mentioned all the way up to now Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam. Prophet Ayyoob. Ayyoob alayhi salam, the anglicized form of his name is spelled J-O-B. Sometimes they'll say Job, like that, not Job. So Ayyoob alayhi salam, or Job, he was a prophet who was mentioned in the Quran. His name was Ayyoob ibn Mus, Mim Waw Sad. And his wife was from the children of Yaqub alayhi salam. Ayyoob alayhi salam had a lot of property and a lot of land in Asham. So he lived in Asham. He had money, livestock, many children and servants. Not all of the prophets were given this though. Remember, most of the prophets, they were not kings. Very few of them, like Sulaiman and Dawood alayhim as-salam, were kings, actual kings. But most of the prophets, they were not like that. As for Ayyoob alayhi salam, Allah gave him a lot of wealth, livestock, many animals, land, and so on. But it's fitting to note here that having a lot of money, having a lot of land, this is not a sign of the acceptance of Allah. Why? Because if you look today, many people who are not Muslims, they have a lot of money, they have a lot of land. Their companies, they can be estimated in the billions. Their worth in the billions or the trillions sometimes. Being given a lot of money, this is not definitively a sign of the acceptance of Allah Ta'ala. Because the Prophet told us clearly, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, inna Allah yu'ti dunya liman ahabba wa liman lam yuhib. Allah Ta'ala gives the world, meaning the riches of the world, land and money and so on, to those people whom He accepts and to those whom He doesn't accept. So among the companions, Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu had a lot of money. He was rich, very, 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 very rich. Likewise, Sayyiduna Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anhu, he was rich. But they used that wealth for the sake of Allah. Lady Khadija also, the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا نَفَعَنِي مَالٌ مَا نَفَعَنِي مَالُ خَدِيجَةٍ. No wealth, he said, helped me more or supported me more than the money of Khadija that she put into spreading al-Islam and supporting al-Islam. So they had money, but they used it for good. The scholars said, some of the Salaf who are the pious people who lived in the first 300 years, some of the Salaf, they said, Al-malu silahul mu'min. Money is like the weapon of the perfect believer. Perfect believer because this person is somebody who knows how to use it in the proper way. This person doesn't waste their money. We're not even talking about, yes, okay, they don't spend it on something haram, of course, but even beyond that, okay, even something that's not haram but not very beneficial, they don't spend it on that. They spend it on their children, for example, teaching them the Islamic knowledge, and so on and so forth. So he said, so the scholars, the Salaf said, Al-malu silahul mu'min. It's like a weapon for the perfect believer, because he uses it to protect himself and to do good. Going back to the saying of the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Inna Allah yu'ti dunya liman yuhib wa liman la yuhib. Allah Ta'ala gives the world, gives wealth to those people whom Allah accepts, like those companions that I mentioned, and Allah gives it to those whom He doesn't accept. Even to the kuffar, Allah gives them wealth and other things like health. Okay, but then he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, وَلَكِنَّهُ لَا يُعْطِي الْآخِرَةَ إِلَّا لِمَنْ يُحِبُّ. But Allah does not give the hereafter except to those whom Allah has given His acceptance to. Meaning, a person cannot be safe in the hereafter. They will not be safe in the hereafter unless they gain the acceptance of Allah. And that is only for those people who believe. Those people who are Muslims, they will get Al-Jannah. Okay? So Allah gives the world to believers and disbelievers, but the hereafter, Al-Jannah, the good in the hereafter, is only for the believers. So Sayyiduna Ayyoob alayhi salam, he had a lot of wealth. And also when the scholars speak about this, they mention something called Az-Zuhud. Zai, Ha and Dal. Az-Zuhud. This means to be detached from the world. Being detached from the world doesn't mean that a person is poor. A lot of the times it does. For many people this is the case. They will be detached from the world by choice, and they'll be happy with that because they don't have any money and they want to stay in that situation, or they have very little and they want to stay in that situation. But others, like Sulaiman alayhi salam and Dawood alayhi salam, they were kings. They had an abundant amount of wealth. But the scholars said, being detached from the world, if you want to understand being detached from the world, then it's not about how much you have in your hand. It's not about the money that you have in your hand, because you might have a lot of money. It's about what's in your heart. Do you carry the love for that wealth, that worldly love for that wealth in your heart or not? If you carry it in your heart, then you're not detached from the world. If you don't carry it in your heart, but you have it in your hand, you use it for the sake of Allah when you need, then even if you have a lot of it, then you are considered to be detached from the world. The caliphs in the past, some of them, they used to, or a lot of them, they used to wear nice clothes. Why? Even though many of them were detached from the world, they used to wear nice clothes because they had people from other nations coming to visit them, to meet the leader of the Muslim world. So they would wear like that. But when they were at home, for example, they would not wear like that. Our Shaykh was once asked, because a lot of people nowadays, they are not geared, they are not inclined towards learning the religious matters, the Islamic matters. And it's better to be simple. So they asked our Shaykh that sometimes, so we want to teach people, and we want to be simple. So even our furniture at home, they said we want to keep it simple and not make it very luxurious. But the thing is, they said to our Shaykh, the thing is that when people come to our house, some of them, because they don't have the right mentality, or they were brought up in a certain way, they might look down on you if you have a certain type of furniture which is considered less or more simple, less extravagant. So can we, let's say, decorate our living room? Can we raise what might be known as the standard of luxury a little bit? So he said, yes, for that purpose, do it in your living room. Do that. Buy some expensive furniture, if you like, some extravagant furniture, if you like, for the sake of those people. Then when they visit you, lots of people visit you regularly, so that they will be more drawn towards you. Some people nowadays, they are not drawn towards the person who wears simple clothing. For example, a religious teacher, a male, who wears simple clothing. They might see that and think that teacher, a male, who wears simple clothing. They might see that and think that this person judge him, and they might say, oh, he doesn't know anything. Like, look, he doesn't look like a scholar. Whatever they imagine a scholar to be. Okay, so a lot of the so it's good nowadays. Well, it has to be the case nowadays that people, they dress well so that other people who have not been taught the proper, let's say, standard or the proper etiquette, so that they would be more willing to learn. So our Shaykh told them that you can do that. You can buy luxurious furniture, extravagant furniture, so that those people are more willing to learn, because it was a place that was regularly visited. Their house was regularly visited. But then they asked him, okay, what about upstairs? Upstairs, in the rooms, in the bedrooms and so on. What do we do there? He said, well, do the guests see those? The guests that come and stay for a while and then they leave? Stay for a few hours and then they leave. Did they see upstairs? They said no. He said, then no, you have stay with simplicity. Stay with simplicity. So I say all this to mention that even if a person has a lot of money, even if they have, let's say, a palace and so on, even if they have a lot of wealth, and there may even be something that is extravagant that they have, if it's in the heart, if they have love for it, a longing for it in their heart, then they are not considered to be detached from the world. Then they will find it hard to reach a perfection in belief. They'll find it hard to do that. Anybody who lives luxuriously, this is not the way of the prophets. So Sayyiduna Ayyoob alayhi salam, we said he had a lot of money, he had livestock and so on. And he was thankful to Allah for all of these endowments upon him. Ayyoob alayhi salam called the people to worship Allah alone. And he ordered the people with good acts and forbade them from committing sinful acts. So he was a prophet, of course. And being thankful to Allah, it means to not use what Allah gave me and you of endowments, to not use those endowments to commit sins. Okay? Just like if somebody gave you a hammer so you could build that shelf, so you could knock in some of the nails, you wouldn't use this, let's say, endowment, this favor that they have upon you, you wouldn't use it on that person's foot, for example. I mean, they gave it to you. You wouldn't use it to disobey them. You wouldn't use it in a way that they don't accept. You wouldn't use it like that. So Allah Ta'ala gave us endowments. Allah gave us hands. Allah gave us eyes. Allah gave us all of these endowments. We are not allowed to use them in what Allah made haram. There are sins of the eye, there are sins of the hand, and so on. if we abide by this, then we are considered to be fulfilling the obligatory thanking. We are considered to be fulfilling the obligatory shukr. The obligatory shukr is not to say Alhamdulillah. This is recommended to say Alhamdulillah. The obligatory thanking is to not use the endowments Allah gave in disobedience to Allah. Now, Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam is a very clear example of the way of the Prophet, which is to have sabr, to be patient. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that the people that are most afflicted with hardships, tough situations, were the prophets. They were afflicted the most. Their children dying, them being in a tough situation whereby a prophet's father, for example, didn't embrace al-Islam, when, for example, a prophet's son didn't embrace al-Islam. Many different situations, being rejected by their people, having stones thrown at them, prophets being murdered, some prophets being sliced in half. So they saw the most hardships compared to non-prophets. Who had the most hardships? The prophets. And who had the toughest hardships, the most painful hardships? It was the prophets. And then he said, our Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, then those who are most like the prophets in their obedience to Allah. So the pious people, they are afflicted with more hardships than people who are not pious. People who are not pious, they will also be afflicted with hardships. Even the non-Muslims, they will also be afflicted with hardships. But that is due to their sins. So a person shouldn't think, so when you think about these two things, okay, you think about wealth and you think about hardships. Some people are naive and they don't think deeply about things. Some people, they think that if you have money, then you're happy, and that you are, some people think that you're chosen by God, that you have God's acceptance if you have lots of money and endowments and land. And that if you're afflicted with hardships, some people think that they must have done something wrong. They must be a bad person to be afflicted with so many hardships, one after the other. They must have done something wrong, or they must be a bad person. But that's not the case. The perfect Muslim may be somebody who has no money at all, lives on the street, barely has what covers his or her private parts, what they need to cover. And they will be afflicted with many hardships, not just the poverty, the hunger, starvation, not just that, but other things as well in their family. So this is a person, rather, who would be accepted by Allah if this person was a Muslim and they prayed, they performed all the obligations, that even though they don't have any money and they have all hardships, they have illnesses, they suffer from so many things, but this person would be, if they performed the obligations, they would be, and stayed away from the haram, they would be an accepted slave of Allah. So the prophets you will see now, Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam, he suffered from an illness for 18 years. 18 years. This does not mean that he was a damned slave of Allah, or that he was an accursed person, wal-'iyadhu billah, or that he was someone who was not accepted. Someone might think that about someone, that this person's been ill for so long, or this person has been afflicted with this hardship for so long. For example, it's a hardship when someone shuns you without a right. Someone shuns you and doesn't talk to you. without a religiously valid excuse. So they're committing a sin by doing that. That's a hardship. Or somebody, a neighbor is unjust to you, or a family member prevented you from part of the inheritance, or somebody cheated you in a transaction, or all these are hardships. All of these are hardships. And this, if somebody saw another person with all these hardships, they might even feel negativity towards them. Like, all these hardships, this person. But this doesn't mean that that person is a bad person just because of the hardships. Ayyoob alayhi salam, for 18 years, he was afflicted with an illness. But it must be noted here that this illness did not prevent him from being able to teach people the Islamic knowledge, because he was a prophet and that was his job. So nothing prevented him, nothing rendered him unable to do that which he was given, which was to convey the religion of Islam. So despite his illness, he would still call people to the way of Allah Ta'ala. So Allah afflicted Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam by making him lose all of his money. He lost all of his money. Then all of his children died. You imagine for a second, imagine the different places where you have your wealth, all of your assets, whether it's an account here or an account there, both accounts, and an account somewhere abroad, or the cash that you have, or the gold reserves that you have, or the silver, whatever you have. Imagine suddenly it all vanished. So the only thing that remained was what you had in your houses. The bread, or whatever milk is in the fridge, that's all you have. That would strike a person. That would hit a person. That would be heavy on the chest. To lose everything all at once. If you had a business and you had a load of stock, let's say, and it burned down. It burned down and all your stock went, and there was no way to replenish it. There was no way for you to be reimbursed. It just went, that's it. Or you had crops on the field, the whole field, it was ablaze, it caught fire. And that's it, all your crops died. For that year, you wouldn't make anything. And Ayyoob alayhi salam lost all of his wealth. With that comes the worry of, how am I going to feed myself, my wife, my dependents, and so on. Then all of his children died. It is said he had 14 children, 7 daughters and 7 sons. They all died at once. At once. And he became severely ill also. So his children, they were in a house, and it is said that the devil lit fire to the house and they all died inside at once, all 14 of his children. He and his wife, alayhim as-salam, survived. So he lost all of his money, which means his crops burned. He had no wealth. His children died. The house in which they were burned. And then he was afflicted with an illness, a severe sickness for 18 years. It is not revealed in the Quran what the illness was, nor did our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam inform us what it was. However, we know that it was a severe illness, which means that it required a lot of patience from him, alayhi salam. But one should not misunderstand. The illness being severe does not mean that it was repulsive. You know how some things are repulsive? Like, for example, if you were to shake someone's hand, and when you took your hand away, a piece of their skin with some blood or some residue, some pus, for example, it came away on your hand. That's repulsive. You wouldn't want to shake that person's hand, would you? Or when, if it's Eid and you hug them, if you hug them and your face, it touched their face and then part of their face, it came onto your, that's repulsive, right? That didn't happen to Ayyoob alayhi salam, of course. Why? This is very, very interesting. Why? Because prophets, they were sent to do a job. And Allah, which is to call people to al-Islam. And Allah equipped the prophets with the best of attributes. Likewise with the best voices, the best appearances, inviting appearances. So if they had been repulsive in some way, in any way, whether being ill in such a way that I mentioned, or if they had, let's say, a voice that was not nice, let's say, that irritated people, they would not be able to do their job properly, because Allah sent them, tabaraka wa ta'ala, so that they would convey the religion and people would accept from them. Allah wouldn't send them with attributes which people wouldn't be invited to. That would be counterproductive. So it's important to note that his illness was not repulsive. Some people misunderstood this, and they ended up attributing to Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam things that are kufr. On one occasion I heard a person saying that, and this is kufr, it's obvious why. They said that Ayyoob alayhi salam, he smelled very bad. They said that his stench was so bad, and this is, subhanallah, one wouldn't say this about their own relative, their own son or their father. But they said that this person claimed that his smell was so bad that the mayor of the town said to him, please leave the town. Imagine the mayor came and knocked on your door, and people had their cameras out, and the mayor said to you, look, you have to leave because you stink. A'udhu billah. How embarrassing. Okay. One is not allowed to say that about a prophet. One, because it's not true. Secondly, this would not occur because this is something repulsive. Okay? So, no prophet had a repulsive illness that would drive people away from him. Some people also claim, now I'll tell you why they claim this. Some people claim something, which I'm going to mention, but they mention it as like a stepping stone for other people to be very patient. They say, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الْكُفْرِ. They say, look at Ayyoob alayhi salam. He was supposedly so ill that he had worms coming out of his body, and that when he would see one of them fall, he would pick it up and he would put it back and say, eat, O worm, from the rizq that Allah gave you. This is kufr. This is kufr. Firstly, if you knew somebody was ill and you wanted to visit them and you love them, and then you heard that the illness is such that they have, in every part of their body, they have worms coming out of their body. You would, when you go to, if you still go to visit them, you'd sit at a distance. Okay? This is something that you don't usually hear, do you? That, oh, that person has got worms coming out his body. You don't hear that. Okay? So to say that about a prophet, وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, and to know that this is something that's repulsive, and then on top of that, which is kufr, for someone to say that he used to pick it back up and put it on his body, this is in some books. So this tells you also, don't believe everything you read in books. Don't read books by yourselves. There's a lot of things in these so-called stories of the prophets that are taken from the Yahud actually. They're taken from the Jews, some of their books, where they say that he'd pick up the worm and put it back and say, "Kuli mimma razaqakillah." Eat from that which Allah gave you as sustenance. This is kufr. People mention that today. Some people mention that today to then say, look at Ayyoob, how patient he was. The worm, he'd pick. And then they'd say, so you need to be patient too. This message of, look, you and I need to be patient, it can be put across by other than this false, blasphemous example. It's enough for us to say Ayyoob alayhi salam was ill for 18 years. And he was very patient with that. So you should be patient. I should be patient too. Have you been ill for 18 years? Sometimes, some of us, we might be suffering from a condition. It might limit our movement a little bit. It might influence the way that we eat. There are certain things we can eat, certain things we can't eat. But most of us aren't continually, actively experiencing pain or suffering. Even if someone was, for example, diabetic, or if someone, for example, had they had a heart murmur, or they, for example, they suffered a stroke, previously, there will be certain points in time where, they need to take it easy, but they're not actively feeling pain. As for Ayyoob alayhi salam, he was immensely, extremely ill for 18 years, which required patience and patience and patience and patience from him. That's enough of an example, because it's the truth. So a person doesn't need to lie. So the illness did not cause worms to emerge from his body, as some claimed. Nor did his flesh fall off his body, as others claimed. All of this is repulsive. It repels a person and does not occur to prophets. Some Jews claimed, that Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam was dumped onto garbage for 7 years. Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam was inflicted, like we said, with a severe illness for very, very long, and he was patient. And that's why the people, they would use his patience as an example. To say Ayyoob alayhi salam was so patient, you should be patient too. Many people got tired with serving him through this extremely long illness, except his wife, rahimahullah. She remained patient with him. One day, she couldn't find anything to feed her husband. So she did something that she should not have done. She cut some of her hair and sold it to the wife of a rich man. Ayyoob alayhi salam's wife used that money to buy some food for Prophet Ayyoob. When she offered the food to her husband, Prophet Ayyoob asked her, "Where did you get the money to buy this food?" She replied, "Don't ask, just eat." However, Prophet Ayyoob insisted to know where she got the money from. Then she told her husband that she had cut off her hair and sold it to buy the food. La ilaha illallah. Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam, he was not happy with her. because it was forbidden in the rules given to Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam, as it is forbidden in these rules of ours, for a woman to cut her hair and sell it to someone who will use that hair to braid it into their own hair. I mean, women can cut their hair, that's fine, of course. But for a woman to attach human hair onto her own hair, for a person to attach human hair, which is not theirs, onto their own hair, this is not permissible. The Prophet warned against this, alayhi salatu wassalam. He said, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ الْوَاصِلَةَ وَالْمُسْتَوْصِلَةَ. Allah Ta'ala damned the one that does that and the one that has it done to her, the one that requests that. Anyway, Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam, he was not pleased with her. A man who used to visit Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam, he committed kufr. The devil whispered to him that the prophets are not afflicted with, they are not hit with affliction. So the devil came to somebody, okay, who was a Muslim. This man was a Muslim at first. The devil came to him and whispered to him and said to him, Prophets are not afflicted with hardships like this. So perhaps that man then thought, well, maybe Ayyoob alayhi salam is not really a prophet. Or the narrations say that he assumed then that Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam must have committed an enormous sin. And it's kufr to say that about a prophet. To say about a prophet that he committed a major sin. So this person, he concluded, and he became an apostate, he became a kafir. He assumed that Ayyoob alayhi salam, he must have committed a major sin for this to happen, for him to be afflicted with this. But we already said, afflictions, for the pious people, these are good signs. They get afflicted because they are pious, because they can then be patient with that and their rank is raised even further. Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam, he heard two men like this talking, one saying to the other that, Ayyoob must have committed an enormous sin for him to be afflicted like this. And by that person committed kufr. Ayyoob alayhi salam heard them. And it is only then that Ayyoob alayhi salam asked Allah to cure him. Only then. Originally, for a person to seek cure, this is permissible. This is permissible. So, if I was ill and I decided to, if I was feeling pain somewhere and I decided not to use medicine, then that's fine, that's permissible. If I want to use medicine, then that's permissible. And if I wanted to use the medicine, if I wanted to seek cure for the sake of Allah, so that it would be easier for me to worship Allah, like I'll be able to concentrate more when I pray, I'll be able to go and give lessons and so on. That's why I sought cure, then what's known as at-tadawi, seeking cure, okay, medicine and so on, then it becomes sunnah. Then it's sunnah. And it's not an obligation for a person to seek cure. We're not talking about if a person, someone... Now there are certain scenarios that I'm not talking about. Okay? We know that as a Muslim, we have to protect our lives. Okay? If a person is about to die and the only food that they have is a small amount of haram food, and if a person doesn't eat it, they would die, then they're obligated to eat that food. Okay? That's one thing. That's not seeking cure. That's staying alive. That's something different. As for seeking cure, it is mubah. Mubah meaning permissible. It's not an obligation. So if a person wants to remain as they are and they want to be patient for the sake of Allah, this is immensely rewardable. However, if they want to seek the cure for the sake of Allah, so that they can continue doing the good deeds and so on, so that they can become rejuvenated and energized to do the good deeds, then it's sunnah. Then seeking cure sunnah. So Ayyoob alayhi salam, he hadn't sought cure. He let it be. He said, I'm going to be patient for the sake of Allah. Allah has willed that I will be ill. So be it. Alhamdulillah. And I will gain reward. 18 years passed. How long will one of us survive? Imagine one of us gets a migraine. If you're someone who gets migraines. Okay, whether it's here, or this side of the head, or imagine, and you say, okay, no, I'm gonna battle it out. I'm gonna be patient for the sake of Allah. I'm getting reward. I'm gonna be patient. How long are you gonna last? I've got work in the morning. Okay, I need to, for example, it's not a bad thing. Okay, so a person might take something for it. A person might, okay, because there are asbab. There are things that a person needs to take care of. But you see, 18 years, Ayyoob alayhi salam, of course, didn't complain, and he didn't seek cure, except then when a person committed kufr. A person thought ill of him. They said, oh, he must have committed an enormous sin. You can't say that about a prophet. So that he heard that person commit kufr. So then Ayyoob alayhi salam asked Allah, Ya Allah, cure me. One day after 18 years of sickness, Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam left for an errand. He met an angel who ordered Prophet Ayyoob to strike the ground with his foot. Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam did so, and water sprang out of the ground. The angel told him, bathe with this water and drink from it. So he did so, and extraordinarily he became healthy, as he had been before. And so 18 years had passed. Allah returned his youth to him. Allah is the creator. As for one of us, you wear whatever cream you want. You take whatever supplement you want. You run however, you walk however much you want. As many masks as you want. But you're not going to truly become youthful again. You know the time. It's the sand is going down and down. The days are ticking by. Okay. As for Ayyoob alayhi salam, his youthfulness returned to him. Allah is the creator of youth and old age. Allah returned his youth to him. It's as though he went back 18 years. Subhanallah. Prophet Ayyoob's wife became worried due to the length of time that Ayyoob alayhi salam was away. She went out to look for him. When she saw him, she didn't recognize him. She didn't recognize. Day and night, she takes care of him. When she saw him, she didn't take care of him. She didn't recognize him. She asked him, Ya Abdullah, have you seen the Prophet of God? The one that was inflicted with the illness? You resemble him. Have you seen him? She said, you resemble him greatly. He said, it is I. Then after that, then she recognized him. And as an endowment of Allah to Ayyoob, Allah returned the youthfulness of his wife also. So as though she went back 18 years. As though. Allah granted her that as a reward for her patience. with the illness of her honorable husband. Allah then gave them a great amount of wealth and more than 20 children. It is narrated that Prophet Ayyoob alayhi salam died at the age of 93. So that is the story of Ayyoob alayhi salam. We have about 10 minutes left. We're going to talk about the obligations of the prayer. But there are a lot of lessons to learn from the life of Ayyoob alayhi salam. So, there are 6 obligations of the prayer. 6 matters that you need to do in the prayer. If you miss any one of these 6, your prayer doesn't count. Your prayer is not valid. If you miss any one of these 6, your prayer doesn't count. Your prayer is not valid. The first obligation, the first integral, is to initiate the prayer by saying Allahu Akbar. You initiate the prayer by saying Allahu Akbar. So a person needs to start it in the correct way. Okay? There are other ways in which a person can start the prayer by other than saying Allahu Akbar. But the correct way is to initiate the prayer by saying Allahu Akbar. Isn't it that a person can start the car in an unorthodox way? So without turning the key or pushing the button, they can go around, they can mess about a little bit, and they can start the car in a different way. Okay? The prayer, you can start it in many different ways, but the correct way to start it is by saying saying Allahu Akbar. As for saying Allahu Akbar, that's not a way to start the prayer. The prayer doesn't start. Imagine the example of the car. Okay, that's not how you start the prayer. In this example, the car wouldn't start even. You wouldn't have even entered the prayer if someone said Allahu Akbar, Akbar, because it's what? Allahu Akbar. Okay, so that is the first integral, and it must be said loud enough for you yourself to hear. So you might be alone and you might whisper it. Okay, like that. You say, so you heard it yourself. Okay, so it has to be loud enough in the norm for you to hear. If you're somewhere where it's very, very busy and you can't physically make yourself hear, then you could just whisper it in the norm. If it was quiet, you'd be able to hear. So even if it's very busy, there's drilling going on outside, for example, or children are making a lot of noise, if you just whisper Allahu Akbar, your prayer, it is initiated. Okay. Along with that, also there are other things that you would do. You would have intended already that the prayer that you're praying is, let's say, the fard of al-Maghrib. The fard of al-Maghrib. So you have to say that it's fard. You have to have in your heart, you have to know at that time in your heart that I'm praying a fard. And you mention the name of the prayer. When I say mention, you've got to know it. Like now, after a short while, everyone's going to pray al-Maghrib. So when you stand to pray, do you believe right now you're praying al-Fajr? No. You know it's al-Maghrib. Okay? Is it sunnah to pray al-Maghrib? The 3 rak'ahs? No. It's fard. So you know, praying the fard al-Maghrib. Allahu Akbar. So you initiate the prayer. So you've now entered the prayer. Now, once you're in, imagine, I like to give the example of a house that has a front door and a back door, right? So you've gone through the front door, now you're in the house. So you're in the prayer. There are certain rules in this house now, okay? Take your shoes off here, don't scream, don't shout, don't eat here, and so on. There are rules in the prayer. You've entered the prayer, there are rules now, you can't eat. It's haram for you to eat now. You're in the prayer. It's haram for you to drink. We're going to mention some of this when it comes to the invalidators. And if you do drink, prayer's gone. Likewise, you're not allowed to talk in the prayer the way you usually talk to people. You say du'as and things, yes, that's different. Okay, so you're in the prayer, fine. The second integral is for a person, the second fard matter is for a person to stand in the prayer. You must stand in the fard prayer and the witr prayer. The fard, as you know, the 5 obligatory prayers. The witr prayer, as you know, after the Isha. And likewise, the wajib, the fard, the 5 obligatory prayers. The wajib prayers are like the witr prayer after al-Isha. And likewise, the wajib prayers such as the Eid prayers. In these, you have to stand if you are able. You have to stand if you are able. As for if a person was not able, then a person does other things. They sit, for example. They would gesture, for example. There are other things that they do, okay? But we're summarizing. The one who is able to stand has to stand. As for the prayers that are not obligatory, not fard, okay, and not wajib as we're saying, a person can sit for them. A person can sit and pray them, and that's not a problem. The third integral, the third obligatory matter is that you have to recite some of the Quran. In the prayer, you have to recite some of the Quran. How much do you have to recite? So, you have to recite, some scholars, they said, you have to recite at least one ayah. At least one ayah. Okay? Some scholars said other things. They said a minimum of 3 ayahs and so on. So you have to recite some of the Quran. Like for example, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدْ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدْ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. You have to recite some of the Quran. If you're thinking, now wait a second, why are we not saying reciting Al-Fatiha? Well, that's coming. That's part of another category of judgments. We're talking about the 6 matters which are like the bare bones of the prayer. If these don't exist, then if a person doesn't do these, then the prayer isn't valid at all. Al-Fatiha is coming, okay? So a person has to initiate the prayer by saying Allahu Akbar. The second matter is that they have to stand for the obligatory prayer when they are able. Third matter is that they have to recite some of the Quran. Okay? Now the thing is, look, there are 3 matters left that I'm going to mention. Let's say a person did all of these 6, and they only did these 6. You know what would happen? Let's say they were praying Al-Maghrib, and they only did these 6 things. That prayer, it would be said, yes, they prayed. They prayed Al-Maghrib. But they would have committed many sins. 9, 10, perhaps even 11 sins. Because on top of these 6 things, for your prayer to be valid, there are other things that you need to do to guarantee that you're not sinful. Does that make sense? So you do these 6 things, it'll be said you prayed Al-Maghrib. If you only did these 6 though, yeah, you prayed Al-Maghrib, you prayed Al-Maghrib, but you were very sinful because you missed reciting Al-Fatiha, you missed reciting Al-Tahiyyat, you missed reciting this, you missed doing that. Okay? So after these 6 things, the last 3 of which I'm going to mention really quickly, there are other things known as the wajibs of the prayer. Now if a person does those and these 6, then they can come out of the prayer without having sinned. And they can come out of the prayer with reward. Okay? So let me mention the last 3 really quickly. So number 1, initiating the prayer by saying Allahu Akbar. Number 2, standing when able, of course, as I mentioned. Number 3, to recite some of the Quran. Number 4, to perform a-ruku'. To perform a-ruku'. Okay? You have to bend enough for your palms to be able to reach your knees. That's how much you have to bend. So you can't just do that. Okay, you bend enough for your palms to potentially be able to reach your knees. So that's the ruku'. That's number 4. Number 5, to do 2 sajdas, to prostrate. Okay, when you perform a sajda, you would put your bare forehead on the floor. You would put your hands on the floor, both your knees, and your feet, you would put them on the floor. Okay? It's recommended for a person to put the underside of their toes. So if you're standing like that, when you're standing up, what's touching the floor? It's the bottom part of your toes, right? So it's sunnah for the bottom part of your toes, men and women, okay, to be touching that part, to be touching the floor. Okay, so a person needs to perform sajda properly. Okay, there are other details which we're going to mention. That's a sajda, both sajdas. For a female, she can wear gloves if she wants. She can, even for a male, he can wear gloves. It's not that they need to be bare, or the feet. It is not a condition that they need to be bare, and so on. The last integral, the number 6, is what? Is that a person needs to sit at the end of the prayer. At the end of the prayer, once they've done the last sajda, they need to do what? They need to sit up. Okay? And they need to sit up for the time it usually takes to recite the at-tahiyyat or the tashahhud. How long does it take? 15 seconds. At-tahiyyatu lillahi was-salawatu wat-tayyibat. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi as-salihin. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. However long that takes, 15 seconds, 12 seconds, 20 seconds, okay? That's how long a person has to sit. That's the 6th integral. For them to sit there for that amount of time. What does that mean? It means if a person sat there for that amount of time, and they did all the other 5 things, they've ticked all 6 boxes, it will be said their prayer is valid. But if they did not do any of the other wajib matters that I'm going to go on to mention next week, then they would have done the 6, the prayer would be valid, but they'd be sinful. Okay? Have you noticed how, if a person did the 6th integral, we didn't even mention the salam? So imagine a person sat there for that amount of time, didn't recite the tahiyyat, just sat there for that amount of time, and they got up, the prayer would be valid, but they'd be sinful. For missing the tahiyyat, for missing the salam, for missing all the other wajib matters, reciting al-Fatiha, the surah after al-Fatiha, staying still when they need to stay still, and so on. There are many things. So these 6 are the bare bones of the prayer. Really quickly, initiating the prayer by saying Allahu Akbar, that's number 1. Number 2 is standing for the prayer when able, for the fard prayer. Number 3 is reciting something from the Quran, as I mentioned. Number 4 is performing a ruku'. Number 5 is a sajda, or the sajdas. And number 6 is to sit for the last sitting, for the time it takes usually to recite the at-tahiyyat. These are the 6 matters. Next time, inshallah, we'll mention the wajib. So we're going to add, let's say, meat onto the bone, and then we're going to, inshallah, add the sunnahs, which are the decorative matters, which can get a person more and more reward. Okay? But for now, we'll stop here, inshallah. Let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. MashaAllah, you jumped from there? Did you jump? Just give me 1 second. I'm just trying to get rid of this. Huh? Yeah. No, I just need 1 minute if you got time. It's just this I need to. Huh? Yeah. No, I just need 1 minute if you got time. It's just this I need to.